friends, we have an extra portion to this podcast. We have a couple other things we want to talk about. So our guest here wants to share his opinion on two important topics. One is the Libertarian Party candidate, Chase Oliver, and then also another topic. So kindly tell us what you think, sir.
Well, yes, I had mentioned before where I was coming from, supporting comedian Dave Smith and then going to Bobby Kennedy. So when Dave Smith had not announced, I said, and I mentioned this before, that I wasn't for the Mises Caucus putting up a candidate, and I was pretty much biased against all the candidates, including some who I liked. So regardless of who our nominee was, I wasn't going to be supportive of them, whether or not I was supporting them for the nomination or not. So when I say that I didn't have an interest in Chase Oliver, I wouldn't have had an interest in people who I liked much better. That said, I didn't particularly like Chase Oliver. I don't really like libertarians who go out of their way to criticize Ron Paul. I find that bizarre and just doesn't really make any sense. But I do give him credit. To his credit, as far as I know, he really is a libertarian issue by issue. So I don't want to take that away from him. And even with COVID, as far as I know, he opposed the prohibitions and mandates. So credit to him. But he believed in doing that performance art nonetheless, and having a limited capacity masked between bites Thanksgiving 2020, and not only doing that but going to social media to virtue signal about it, bad look for libertarians. So that's another reason I particularly didn't like him. That said, he was going into a buzzsaw of the election, so while I like to make fun of the fact that he got less than 0.5%, I think a much, much better Libertarian Party candidate, not Dave Smith, but almost anybody else, may have got 0.6%. I think there was almost no chance. I think there was almost no chance that we were getting our typical 1 to 3% this election. So
so underperformed.
Yes, So while I don't like Chase, I certainly do not blame him. I only blame him very partially for what happened. It's more so the circumstances of the election, in my opinion.
Okay. Can you briefly tell us about the Mises Caucus? That's something we've talked about on the podcast before, and our audience, they might want to know familiar because you're a part of it. So if you could tell us your view of the purpose of the caucus and what it believes and does.
Sure. Well, it certainly believes in putting at the forefront a few policy issues, foreign policy and money and banking mostly. There's a few others. One of the adopted strategies of the Mises Caucus has been building coalitions, including anti-war coalitions with groups right, left, center, and all over the place, anti-prohibition coalitions for removing the prohibition on marijuana and on hallucinogens. They've done in some cities and counties here and there across the country. So let's see. There's the important policies. There's the coalition building. Certainly the principles of peace and sound money, which go into the important policy issues, and certainly injecting the Austrian School of Economics into our policy discourse when relevant. And at least how I saw it early on was, in addition to everything else, a rejection of those in the party who are in the party just for a position that makes them feel important, and also those in the party trying to keep out other perfectly good libertarians based on some of their personal feelings about issues that don't really have political relevance or that shouldn't have political relevance. Unfortunately, the Libertarian Party is still the Libertarian Party. We're still all just volunteers. Some people might disagree with Angela McArdle's strategy for this past election. We still don't know how it will shake out. And certainly the Mises Caucus was largely aligned with her as far as I can gather. And I was not opposed to some of the deals she was making as long as they come to fruition. So I'm still hopeful. Some people view what the Mises Caucus has done and what she has done aligning with Trump, et cetera, as being as being counterproductive and even being antithetical to being a party leader. To the extent that the party's purpose is to put up a presidential candidate and put support behind it, they have a point. To the extent that the party exists to promote liberty and to get wins at the policy level in government, the success remains to be seen. But
Okay.
I'm hopeful.
Okay, so you're talking about people the party wants to keep out that are libertarians, but you said they might not be perfect on every issue. Is that people like Justin Amash? I hear people criticizing him because they found he voted for something like funding for education. So are they being nitpicky? Is that what they're doing? Being nitpicky?
I'm not familiar of that particular issue. I would say it largely is, in fact, some of these people would like Justin Amash. Not all of them, though, because actually Justin Amash is pro-life, and
Okay.
he might be more perceived as being on either the establishment or on the left side of the Libertarian Party, which is not true, but he might be perceived to some extent as that. He did vote for the Trump impeachment from the House, which might be part of that. And another part, he might have pragmatic rhetoric. But issue by issue, he's pretty great. I would say the particular issues is if somebody is just not enamored with alternative lifestyles, they're not even trying to prohibit alternative lifestyles. They're just not trying to bow down to them, and maybe they support at the local level, maybe not allowing a drag queen story hour at their library. There's some people in the party that don't like people who don't want drag queen story hour at their library.
Oh,
And I think it's absurd to not like someone who has that opinion.
Okay.
Yes. Also, drag queens used to be relegated to like clubs and stuff, the whatever, bars and whatever. It was never a thing for kids. So it's just bizarre. And
yep.
I'm not even going out of my way to criticize these people. Apparently Chase Oliver took some position on this, which was controversial. I don't even care about that. So anyway, anyway.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So you raise a good point, because a lot of people are okay with everything adults do, but when it comes to children, it's a much more nuanced and difficult choices we have to make.
Absolutely. But separate from children, people can have their own personal proclivities. As long as they don't support prohibiting an otherwise peaceful activity, they're still a libertarian in good standing. But as I said, there's certain people in the party who don't want people with their own opinions that are not inherently encouraging of behavior that should be legal but might not be the best for society.
Okay, sounds good. So what else would you like to tell our audience in this bonus segment we have?
I think we mostly covered it. I guess I mentioned not only Chase Oliver but the third party candidates in general. I don't have much comment on them other than Jill Stein. She seems like a nice woman. I don't know. Certainly hardcore Zionists wouldn't like her. I'm not really a hardcore Zionist or anti-Zionist. I do view it as a super complicated issue. And as a Jewish person who has a tiny connection to it with a tiny bit of family, makes it even more complicated. But I do take the libertarian position on it. No foreign aid and all of that. But anyway, Jill Stein, anyone who was on the left who didn't like Kamala Harris and or anybody in general who was against Israel and that was their number one issue, they probably voted for her. And it is kind of funny that both her and Bobby Kennedy, who was not even running anymore and was only on the ballot in some states, removed himself from the ballot in many states, they both got more votes than Chase Oliver nonetheless. Kind of funny. But, yeah. I guess very last thing, disappointed that Amendment 3 in Florida did not pass, the recreational cannabis cannabis amendment. And, it only got about 55% and it needed 60%.
Oh, fine.
And there was almost nothing negative in the ads about the concept of ending the prohibition on cannabis. Most of the No on 3 ads involved making stuff up that wasn't in the language, such as that it would be inherently controlled by the corporations who were advocating for it. So all it did was add to the medical marijuana amendment, which was already in the Constitution since I believe 2016 when it passed with almost 70%. It added the language to pretty much take what they had with medical and add recreational to that. It allowed the medical shops to sell recreational, and it also authorized the state legislature or a department to issue licenses for recreational shops as well.
Okay.
What it did not do, it did not legalize home grow, but it did not prohibit home grow either.
Huh.
So people were saying that this would prohibit home grow. Well, home grow was already prohibited by state law, not in the Constitution, but by Florida state statute. So putting this in the Constitution, Amendment 3, would not have required another amendment to prohibit, to legalize home grow. We could have done that in the future, but the legislature itself could have taken it upon themselves to end the prohibition of home grow. So the point is, I viewed Amendment 3 as only steps in the right direction. Was it all the way? No. But was it adding any negative along the steps in the right direction? I do not see that at all. And for people who are looking at the language after the fact, it's only what's underlined in the full text on the state's website was what was added to the language. What's not underlined was already there as part of the medical marijuana amendment from 2016. So I view it's not even a good with certain things that you have to measure whether they're good or not. It was all good. So I was very disappointed in a lot of the opposition to it, including from people on my side.
Oh, no. People on your side. So what about your governor? Did he have an opinion on it?
He was no on 3 as well. Governor DeSantis does not like marijuana. To his credit, he faithfully implemented the medical marijuana after Rick Scott dragged his feet and effectively implemented nothing. Excuse me one sec. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So Governor DeSantis doesn't like pot, but he did do the will of the voters by implementing medical, and as far as I know, patients can get pretty much whatever they want, and they're pretty happy with it under the legislature correcting it and him signing it into law. And he does like being popular and doing the will of the people to an extent, and he does like Tallahassee raising revenue. That said, he doesn't like pot. He was no on 3. Most of his reasons were the same reasons I already said, that they were making up that it's just going to be protectionism. So it's funny how most of the no on 3, including from Governor DeSantis, were actually coming from a libertarian angle. It was inaccurate what they were saying, but if what they were saying was true, it made it either more debatable or easy to say no. But their facts were just incorrect. He may have made reference to may I use bad language here?
Go for it.
DeSantis may have made reference to the shithole states where they have drug addicts all over the streets. I don't remember. I was surprised Sheriff Grady Judd did not make reference to that. I was surprised. But Governor DeSantis, I think he did, and a few people did. But thing is, we have laws that oppose vagrancy and that oppose trespass, and we don't tolerate shoplifting and all of this. So there's no reason why ending the prohibition of cannabis would have inherently caused the situations that they have in these shithole states like California.
Yeah, and marijuana is different than the other drugs too. So marijuana and opiates are completely different. So it seems like it's a stretch to make that comparison.
Right. I would argue ending the prohibition of hard drugs as well would be similar. It would not result in the stuff they have going on over there for the reasons I mentioned. But your reasoning about marijuana is even more relevant.
Yep. So you mentioned that some people who are libertarians opposed it. Was it because they were confused about the bill, or what was their motive or their perspective?
One of my friends, she simply said that because the language was allegedly written by like the big corporation that was pushing it, therefore it would be protection of them, therefore she opposed it.
Wow.
I don't know if she read the language. If she did read the language, I suspect that she read more than what was just underlined. I suspect that she read some of what already existed was being added. I don't know. But that was unfortunate. That's pretty much run of the mill. People either read something different than I read, or they believed the ads that came from sounding like they were from our libertarian perspective.
Interesting. All right. That's good stuff. Good extra stuff we got in there. So our audience will love this.
Good.
All right, Mark, we thank you for doing this extra bonus segment, and we wish you all the best in everything you do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You have a blessed day.
You too. Bye now.
Bye.